everyone, I'm Elizabeth Newsom and welcome to my booktube channel. Well, it's the day after Valentine's Day, or Singles Awareness Day as a lot of people know it, or at least those of us who don't have a boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other. And maybe some of you out there are still kind of getting over your Singles Awareness Day depression and coping by eating copious amounts of chocolate given to you by loved ones or people who pity you in general. It's really good. But hey, there's no need to stress about being in a relationship. After all, even if you were dating someone, there's a 2% chance that you'd have a happy marriage with them. First of all, it's unlikely that you'd actually marry the person you're dating. Second of all, half the people who are married get divorced. Third of all, half the people who stay married are unhappy. And I know these cheery statistics are just what you need right after Valentine's Day. And believe it or not, I didn't actually bring them up to make you depressed. It is unlikely that you'll actually have a happy marriage, and some people sadly never do. But in my opinion, statistics can be defined with the right amount of preparation and effort. For example, if you said you were going for an SAT score in the 97th percentile, someone might tell you,
"Hey, why aim so high? I mean, that is totally unrealistic."
And if you put the same amount of effort and preparation into it as everyone else does, then they would be right. On the other hand, if you bought books about the SAT, listened to tutorials, took notes, took practice tests, the likelihood of you getting into the 97th percentile increases dramatically. And I know the SAT score is way different from a romantic relationship, but in my opinion, the same principle still applies. So if we prepare for a relationship and do the right things, it's not a guarantee that we'll have a happy marriage with whoever we date, but it certainly increases the likelihood that we'll get our hearts broken a few less times. So now I'm going to share some books and talks with you about how to do relationships right. The first book I have for you guys is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I did actually read this book before I was in a romantic relationship. The knowledge I've learned from this book has proved to be tremendously helpful, not only in a romantic relationship, but also in any relationship I have, especially with my family. So in case you guys don't know, the concept of the 5 love languages is that everyone has a different love language. There's quality time, touch, gifts, acts of service, and words of affirmation. Ever since I've read this book, I've tried to practice speaking different love languages to different family members. And to be honest, I haven't always done a great job of doing that, but I've put a lot more effort towards being a loving sister and daughter since I've read this book. And this book would really help if you're in a romantic relationship too, because it just helps you to be mindful of what that person's love language is and how you can best give to them. And then my next book for you guys would be Boundaries in Dating. And I actually read this book while I was currently in the relationship. So essentially, it's about having boundaries while you're dating. Go figure. But it's actually a really important concept and one that's very easy to overlook. So by boundaries, it just means maintaining your status as still being individuals. Because even if you're dating, yes, you're a couple and all, but you're still individuals. And as individuals, it's still good to maintain some sort of distance between each other. For example, having bad boundaries in a romantic relationship would be like changing where you go to church or changing your future plans based off of this one person. Not that it's bad to want to spend more time with them and to do the same things and to have some sort of plan for the future in case things do work out, but you have to be prepared if things don't work out. For example, if while I had a boyfriend, I started going to the same Bible studies and clubs and church groups that he was, our breakup would have probably hurt me even more just because I was so immersed in the same community that he was. So while it's good to share some things and spend some time together, it's not always a good idea to base your life off of this one person. Anyhow, I hope I explained that concept okay. They do a really great job of talking about it in the book, so I definitely recommend it. Because, at least for me, boundaries were something that were kind of hard to maintain. Because one of my first impulses is to get people to like me and to make them happy. So this was something I really needed. And then our final book I actually have in print. It's called The Sacred Search. And below the title, it says, "What if it's not about who you marry, but why?" And I love the whole concept of this book because it kind of takes the focus away from looking for the other person that's right for you and will make you happy, and instead places the emphasis on yourself. And not just looking for the right person, but becoming the right person for someone else so you can attract the right person. It also placed a lot of emphasis on how both of you have to have the same life goal. This This is a Christian book, so of course the goal is pursuing God to the best of your abilities. And then it has a few great questions on the back, like, what if being in love isn't a good enough reason to get married? What if dating isn't about finding the one, but about serving the one who loves you most? So I just love those type of questions and how this book really inspired me to be more introspective. And so if you're single or even if you're dating someone, I definitely recommend reading this. And then I have two talks for you guys. The first is by the Breakaway Ministries, and it's called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. And to listen to this, you can just download the free Breakaway Ministries app. I listened to this right after my breakup, and it had so much good information in it. And this was great to listen to right after my breakup because I was really interested in areas I could have improved on. And then finally, there's a TED Talk called Select the Right Relationship. And I'll link that down below for you guys. I listened to this talk a few days ago, and everything in it was just like, wow, she is so right. This TED Talk kind of just summarizes tons and tons of relationship advice that I've heard about, and I now know to be true since I've been in a relationship. And now I'd like to offer you guys some really personal dating advice based purely off of my experiences and what I've learned. I have this picture of myself on my iPhone. A friend took it of me right before my first date. I have my makeup done. I have my hair curled. You can see my messy closet in the background. I have a huge smile on my face. My cheeks are flushed. My eyes are just sparkling with this romantic hope that can only come from naivete. And I keep it as a reminder just for all the hopes I had for that relationship and how I was so very certain that it would work out. Because, if we think about it, every single time we get into a relationship, we are certain it will work out, or else we wouldn't get into it in the first place. I really did a poor job of guarding my heart and just being realistic and realizing, like, hey, this might not work out. I did do some things right in the relationship. I actually did more things right than I thought I would because it was my first relationship. I wasn't sure I was totally emotionally mature enough for one. But a few good things are that we were always really honest with each other, or if he'd done something that kind of annoyed me or I misinterpreted something, we were always very clear about that. Something else I feel like I did well is I never tried to change him. I kind of have this take it or leave it policy with dating. But the point is I never try to change someone while I'm dating them, just because that's not what a romantic relationship is for. And I feel like the final thing that I did right in the relationship was breaking up. Because when I broke up with him, I made sure that it was based on my decision, not my parents or my friends or anyone else's. I took some time and I really thought about it and I prayed about it. It was really hard to come to my own decision and decide what I would and wouldn't compromise on. But because I took the time to make that decision, I know a lot more about myself than I did before. I also messed up a lot in the relationship too. I remember before I was in a relationship, I looked at girls who were dating guys who were like crazy about them, who were totally blind to all their flaws and shortcomings. And I thought, how silly, like to get so emotional about a guy. I'm never going to be one of those hormonal teenage girls. I'm going to be practical and down to earth about this. And in some ways, I was practical about the relationship and I did a good job, but in a lot of ways I fell short. Like there were so many things early on that should have been like a warning signal, like, hey, you guys don't have the same values, this isn't going to work out. Part of that was because I just liked him so much and I looked up to him. He was like my first date. I just thought he was the best thing ever. But another part of it, I think, was that I was afraid of losing my first relationship, which was an enormous mistake. And if I ever have the opportunity to be in a romantic relationship again, I want to make sure I'm not afraid of breaking up or of not having someone to be with. Just because in some cases, that fear stopped me from doing what I knew to be right and from following my personal values, and instead a lot of times I focused on just making him happy. It's a great thing to want to make someone else happy in a relationship, but ultimately your values and principles have to come first or it will never work out. So while I do regret certain mistakes I made in the relationship, I don't really regret entering the relationship, just because I discovered so much about myself. And hopefully you'll find some of the resources I've given you or some of the advice I've shared helpful, because breakups are really painful and relationships are just so hard. And you also have to be open to constant criticism from your friends and family members about the relationship. just because every single thing needs to be scrutinized. Because after you're married, all those little flaws and kinks in dating will become magnified and you'll have to deal with them all of the time. But hopefully it'll be easier for you guys than it was for me. Well, with all of that said, happy post Valentine's Day or Singles Awareness Day, and I hope you guys enjoy those chocolates.